What was the
Well,
thought process for coming back?
I always describe singles as like that ex-boyfriend that you like really loved but was not good for you. That was kind of singles for me, like it's great when it's good, but it's like this whole mental up and downness that's as well. And I probably put too much like of my emotion in it. Like a bad singles day for me is like the death of my dog. It's like it's hard for me to get over.
Because we were just talking about the fact that in the midst of all these conversations about hot paddles, the conversation actually turned to eyewear protection and whether it's necessary in pickleball. And it seems to be the consensus that there is a greater need for eye protection than ever before. So we recently partnered with Tifosi, which is Tifosi. It's the Italian word for super fan. And that's exactly who they make their eyewear for. Tifosi Optics designs sunglasses that allow you to get out and live your passion. Tifosi Glide technology allows the frame to slide on comfortably and provides an anti-bounce fit with an integrated hinge, ensuring these sunglasses slide on easily without pulling your hair. Crafted from shatterproof polycarbonate, these lenses not only reduce glare but also offer scratch resistance, ensuring unparalleled eye protection. Hydrophilic rubber nose pads that increase grip the more you sweat, so glasses will stay secure during even the most intense activities. That part's really key, I think. TifosiOptics.com, Tifosi optics.com. All caps DINK20 will get you 20% off. So go get yourself some shade, some eye protection. Paddles are hotter than ever.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie,
You said I didn't miss anything this weekend?
No, nothing at all. I don't even know what we're going to talk about today.
In this studio, your owner of the Fives, Gary V, was being interviewed by Chris Williamson, one of your pickleball students.
Oh, were they actually in here?
Yeah.
When did this happen?
Like the other day, like 2 days ago.
Unbelievable, Gary. The lack of respect. I would have walked over, Gary. Unbelievable. You got a Fives guy here, and the lack of respect.
I don't know where I saw it. I think I saw it on.
You know what? I want to be traded.
It is kind of messed up that hopefully they brought you up. So they talk about pickleball at the end of the episode, and you might have gotten a shout out. So that'd be cool, but we'll have to see.
That would be sick. Yeah, I know Chris. Funny story. He was one of the first people I met in Austin. I was out at SARC, South Austin Rec Center, and these two huge shirtless dudes came over with weird accents, and they're like, "Hey, how much longer are you gonna play?" And I was like, "I don't know. We got like half hour." And so I flag him down when we're done drilling, and I had never seen this dude before in my entire life. And as soon as I go home and open up YouTube, there he is.
On your
first
screen.
Thing was Chris Williamson like interviewing Joe Rogan or something. So I shot him a message. I was like, "Hey, dude, I didn't know you were some podcaster. Like, I'm actually a pro pickleball player, and you suck." And he responded. I was like, "Man, dude, you're horrible at pickleball. Let me like show you a thing or two." And so we got together a couple times.
Yeah, he's pretty big. I don't think people realize he's got like 1.6 million followers on Instagram. I think he does over 1 million episodes or listens per episode. He has like a lot of really big people on, Gary V, obviously.
Yeah, he's super good. Like talking to him in person, the dude is like an encyclopedia. Like he's got some sort of scientific backing for anything that you talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Like he knows all the different stats. He knows all these different principles and whatnot. Like he got his start in club promoting, switched over.
He was on reality TV.
Yeah, he was on reality TV
like
doing
Love Island or something.
Yeah, he did that too. Dude's a very, very interesting guy. Let's get him on the pod.
So when Lea jumps on, how do you think she's gonna go deep into this JOOLA stuff?
I don't know. I mean, you just never know. This is gonna be Lea's episode. We're gonna go with the flow. Wherever Lea wants to take us, we'll go.
So what's your perspective being on site? All this talk about these JOOLAs failing. Some of the pros aren't even playing with the Gen 3s. They're playing with Gen 2s that are painted to look like Gen 3s. Like, is the conversation active amongst the players while you're there as all this stuff is happening? Or is it kind of like, nobody really cares?
No, we certainly care. It's it's a very interesting time because a lot of these paddle companies are creating paddles for their pros that aren't the same thing that are going to market. Um, even if they're painted the same, there's different batches and whatnot. Um, the spin and power, which is all pros really care about, is pretty pretty ridiculous from those paddles. It seems like the players who were using the new ones that actually hit the market doesn't seem like it's quite as good as the paddles that they were using, the sort of unbranded ones from a couple weeks ago. But now it makes sense that there are some apparently that are branded to look the same way but play different. It's just a mess. And so honestly, like the fact that we have to pretend that the paddle that some of these players use is the same paddle that you can get is stupid to begin with. That doesn't happen in any other sport. If I wanted Roger Federer's tennis racket, I can't get the exact same thing as what Federer uses. Or if you want, let's say Cody Bellinger's baseball bat, like you can't get the exact same thing. He's got a different piece of technology. And so the fact that we have to pretend like we're all playing under the exact same equipment, I think is dumb. But at the same time, like we're not enforcing this stuff well at any point. So we'll see. We'll ask. I think with enough prodding, Lea will answer just about anything. She doesn't hold back, or at least hasn't previously.
Well, she's gonna jump on in a second here. She's back. All right, ready, Lea? Give us a hand up, and we'll throw you in here.
Oh, what up?
Welcome to the pod. Welcome.
What's up, guys?
It's been a while.
I know. It's actually been a year since
Really?
the whole Yeah, it's been a whole year since our Red Rock fiasco, and now I'm here in Red Rock. I'm a little disappointed. I totally forgot about the studio. Studio is definitely better.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Did you think you were going to be in Austin?
I was going to.
Yeah. And you're in Utah right now.
Yeah, just to get used to the altitude, and it was actually just easier going from LA to here because it was just like a 6-hour drive essentially.
Right.
I think a decent amount of people did that too. It would have made more sense if the Red Rock tournament was Wednesday through Saturday again, because then you really could have just linked the two tournaments together. They used to not play that tournament on Sundays in Utah.
They would not play it on Sundays?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, last year was championship Saturday.
Right. They don't do that anymore?
Not this year.
I think they just needed a little bit more time to set up, would be my assumption, or something happened with the courts, or I'm not really sure.
Remember when they switched to Championship Sunday and there was a whole thing of like whether Callie would play?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I think she skipped a couple.
And then she eventually was like,
when she was playing with Catherine, she skipped a couple. Like and then I think she had a couple partners lined up who ended up pulling out on her just because of the whole Sunday thing. And then when she played with Irina, she went through and played. So it was only like 3 to 4 that she pulled out of maybe with Catherine. And then once her and Catherine stopped playing, then she started doing it.
Are you going to Utah this weekend?
I am. I'm going tomorrow. Dude, I'm unretiring from singles just like Lea.
Yeah, you two making your singles
you playing?
comebacks.
I am. Not I'm not unretiring from singles. I'm getting my 2 events in but yeah.
You don't have a men's partner?
No, I screwed it up. I thought I was playing with Travis again, and I was texting back and forth with Liv and Dylan, who were checking in. I was like, yeah, I'm playing with Travis. And Dylan's like, no, you're not. I was like, yeah, I am. And Travis is like, no, you're not. I was like, oh, okay, singles it is. So I screwed that one up. That's on me, but I get
Who's Travis playing with then?
Travis is not playing. He had something else that he had to do. So I get to go out there like Adam Stone. Adam Stone has the best attitude of anybody in pro pickleball when he plays pro pickleball, which is, I have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
I just get to go try and screw up somebody else's day. And if I can't, well, then I have the day to myself in Red Rock.
That's what Colin used to do. Once a year, he would play singles just to try and see how far he could make it, ruin a few people's weekends.
That's
Yeah.
what I should just start doing instead of the full-time thing. It's exhausting.
Yeah, but you're too good to just try and ruin somebody else's weekend.
It would be more fun though. Like this is the fourth weekend in a row, and I think I hit a wall at the end of Houston, and I wasn't going to play singles in LA, but I'm like, oh, it's a good draw. I'm on a hot streak. And I knew it. Like whenever you have like the mindset of maybe I shouldn't play, you shouldn't play.
Yeah, that's a fair take. So, are you playing singles in Red Rock again here?
I am. Yep. Yeah, I am. I wasn't going to. My plan was just to play in LA, but LA did not go my way, so I'm just gonna play in Red Rock now.
Gotcha. What I actually don't know who took you out in singles in LA.
Lacey.
Lacey. Okay. Lacey is one of the best athletes on the women's side, I think. Like just
Yeah.
speed and athleticism wise.
And reach.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, she's definitely, and when she's hot, she's hot. Like, when Lacey's playing well, she's playing extremely well.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, so why did you quit singles in the first place?
What do you mean? It's been well documented.
Well,
yeah, and I think we've talked about it on here too.
Like, I think we've talked
have.
about it. Yeah, I mean, it's essentially why I should have pulled out last weekend. I have to work 20 times as hard as, like, I just had to leave my practice session this morning and I just woke up from a nap because my blood sugar was just kind of out of control, and it's really, really hard to deal with. And I wasn't doing the right things last year to take care of myself. So it just started building up and building up and building up. And I got really, really sick. So, and for me, it's just like, it has a lot of adverse effects. And I was exhausted. My blood sugars were uncontrollable even on normal days. And yeah, that's kind of why I stopped.
Well, it's not just the physical either, right? Just knowing that you could have your blood sugar drop at any moment. It's just like it's in the back of your mind constantly. And I bet that's just frustrating.
Well, it's also like you're not the same person. Like I was a shell of myself this past weekend just due to exhaustion and a lot of blood sugars. This morning I was like a shell of myself. Like you cannot physically do the same things that you can do, and then when you're adding competition on stress on top of it, it's just really, really, really tough to do. Not that I'm complaining about it, but it definitely just does exhaust you a lot of times. And like this morning I hit a wall. Like about once every 6 months I hit a wall of like, God, if I just didn't have this. And I hit that wall this morning. So it just makes things a lot more difficult. It makes things a lot more exhausting. And then when you're not physically yourself and you feel it, it's pretty disappointing.
So I can only imagine how difficult that is. Singles is hard enough without having to deal with that. Pickleball is hard enough without having to deal with that, but singles especially. Did you feel like you had the blood sugar issue under control, and that's why you decided to come back and play singles? Or what was the thought process for coming back?
I mean, well, a lot of it was like, I always describe singles as like that ex-boyfriend that you like really loved, but was not good for you. That was kind of singles for me, like it's great when it's good, but it's like this whole mental up and downness that's as well. And I probably put too much like of my emotion in it. Like a bad singles day for me is like the death of my dog. It's like, it's hard for me to get over. So that was part of it, but also like I was exhausted last year. I wasn't doing the right things off court to maintain myself. And, just during July, I hit a wall. Like I remember after that tournament run, after I quit, I think I didn't touch a paddle. I just like laid in bed at my parents' house for like a week and just was purely exhausted. Like had to have my mom bring me food and water. So it was just a lot that I was putting myself through, and I wasn't doing the right things to prepare myself for it. So I definitely used the off season and last year as a time to recover, get my numbers back up, get a better diet plan, and start taking care of my body more off court and like build it up to get ready.
So was the plan always to do that, or did you really not know that you were going to come back eventually? Like you knew that you needed to obviously like fix some stuff and work on the off court, but did you know it in the back of your head that you'd come back?
It's better for the
I
brand
think
to retire and then unretire versus just take a break.
I think it's better. I think like when I said it, I meant it. Like, you know, like when I said it, I didn't even think it was going to be that big a deal. Like I had been telling people in San Francisco the week before, like Catherine and Annalie, like I'm done now. Like my doctor's telling me to be done. I should be done. And so like when Ireland asked me that question, I didn't even think it was going to be that big a deal. And so then it kind of made it into this like big official retirement thing that I wasn't planning on. And I always in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, I could probably come back. Like, I want to come back, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think I truly believed it until I like actually stepped out there for the first time and did it.
Well, how does it feel to be back? Gold medal, monkeys off your back, as you put it.
Yeah. And then a big letdown week after. It's good. It's tiring, but you know, I do think like you should do it. Like I feel like if you're good at it, you should do it until you can't do it anymore. So I always say I'm just going to keep doing it until my body tells me I can again. Then maybe I'll retire and come back for a third one.
I just want you to unretire from Twitter.
Oh yeah, I had to.
Why?
Because you know, like it was just good for me to not be voicing my opinion. It's good for me to voice my opinion behind closed doors.
Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah. You know, I actually wrote a note that I was going to show you when I was in studio that I made when I agreed to it. And it said, "Don't take Zane's bait." My reminder just went off.
Don't take Zane's bait. What do you mean?
I mean, you're really good at baiting people to say stuff.
Oh, come on.
Just
DJ came on here and we were talking about something completely different. And then he's like, yeah, I can't play with carbon.
Yeah,
like,
right. I remember
I don't do that much.
Yeah.
Am I that bad?
No.
There was a reason.
What did I do?
You're pretty good at it, I think. No one's better than Jimmy Miller. Like all Jimmy Miller had to do was like say a sentence and I would go off. Like he has the great leading questions, but Zane definitely loves some controversy.
Who doesn't? I'm not saying I don't love controversy. I didn't say that.
Well, I don't.
Everyone does.
I don't know if you realize this, but you were voted the third most influential voice in the sport. Don't you think the third most influential voice in the sport should be on Twitter, being influential?
Who was second? I know Zane was first.
Probably Jimmy, I think. I don't remember who was second, but I know it was Zane, then somebody, then you.
It was probably Jimmy had to have been up there, I would guess.
Yeah, he was definitely in the top 5, but
I should be, but definitely like life is a lot easier and I don't have to hear as many trolls. So
yeah, there are definitely some trolls. I think you just need to learn the skill of posting and ghosting when you say something controversial on there. Just say what you gotta say and then get out of there.
I'm so bad at that. Now I've gotten so good at Instagram. Like when people like, there's this one guy on Instagram, like even when he's blocked, I still see people like being like blah, 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 where I could like hit a shot and he'll say something and I used to respond to him and he was the first guy I blocked. Now anybody who like tags me in something or like will say something on my post, I just go, oh, block.
Yeah, that's a way better approach. Just who cares?
Exactly.
But is part of that though, like you saying, all right, no more Twitter, no more voicing my opinion, is part of that because you feel like you're one of the few who do? So when you do, it relatively seems much louder because there's just a lack of voices from pros generally on sensitive topics.
Yeah. And I think I just also like, I mean, Zane can probably speak for the same thing and maybe he doesn't care, but I made my life a lot more difficult than it needed to be last year. And I was just at a point where like, okay, I don't want to expel the energy into other things. I'm just going to expel the energy into myself. And because then I get like so passionate about it and I go on about it. So it's just better for me to completely let go of everything. Just because it made my life more difficult and I didn't feel like it was doing any good.
Yeah. I suppose at a certain point, it does become sort of like politics where you can be all riled up about an issue, but can you actually mobilize enough people to change it where it's worth your effort to do so? Right. You can go out and be a martyr talking about the things that might be true, but is that worth the time, effort, and repercussions from Big Pickle?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
I mean,
know.
that was ultimately the like thing I came to, and I'm like, it's really not. It makes things a little bit more difficult. Like this still is my professional field, and I want to be involved in pickleball for a long time, and I don't want my like gravestone in pickleball to say like she called out this. So like it was just kind of like, all right, I did my thing. I think I know where people think I stand. If anyone wants to get a movement going, totally first call, but you got to have some people behind you.
So it sounds like Big Pickle got to you too.
Yeah, shit.
Yep.
Hate
Essentially.
to see it.
They're good. They're good.
They're good at their
Never
job.
see them coming.
Okay, so we've talked about this before, and we've actually asked you this question before about what one thing that you would change in pro pickleball, or what do you think is one of pro pickleball's biggest issues at the moment? Previously, when you were on here a year ago, you were really pushing for drug testing. Would you say that that's as big of an issue now as it was a year ago, or would you change your answer now?
I mean, I think, yeah, the two main issues for me are like kind of still out there. I definitely think like, and like we're making more money than WNBA players. We're making more money than MSA soccer players. Like, why don't we have drug testing? There's no rules, or like even writing some rules down for it. I'm still big on the drug testing, but it's a year later, and I know it's not going to happen. I would also say my biggest issue right now that's overtaken number one is what we're going to do about line calls, what we're going to do about refs. The game's moving way too fast. I think we still have a lot of refs that kind of like started in the beginning. Not anything against them, but the game's speeding up. The game's getting much more professional, and that all is just kind of staying the same. We don't really have any replay systems besides anywhere on the first court. Now we're playing huge. Like there was a semifinal match against Etta and Megan on Grandstand, and calls were made that definitely, in my opinion, altered that match, and nothing can be done. So that's right now. I feel like if you're not going to put money in drug testing, you're not going to put money into adequate testing like that, then we need to start doing something just about strict line calls. Like there's betting in this sport, and we still have an issue with all that. That seems like a huge red flag to me.
I think Tom Webb, APP CMO, when he was on a panel at RacquetX, it was, they had representatives from PPA, MLP, APP, USA Pickleball. Tom was a representative for APP. Those were like the two things he brought up. He was like, if we really want to push this sport forward, drug testing and players can't be making their own line calls. Until we fix those two things, there's a natural ceiling as far as like how far we can push the sport forward.
Yeah, and I just have like a huge problem with like we have professional, like I can't go out on a forum and speak out against, like the whole Pat Smith thing, but refs have no code of conduct, and there's multiple times when I see refs like chatting with players, and refs like, like I'm walking out to my semifinal match and like a ref is chatting with Lee Waters, and it's like, hey, we don't think you refs are cool. Like we're just trying to make way, and it's smart of them to do. It's not like smart of how I am, where I basically don't acknowledge a ref until I'm yelling at them. But and I see calls against me because of it. And so I think there's like no code of conduct for them. There's no like, system for them or any of that. And it's really starting to become an issue. And the game is getting so fast that you cannot tell me with someone who's wearing sunglasses, maybe not prescription, and a hat on, can actually see calls, especially off of our paddles. So there's got to be a lot done about that. So if you don't want to put in adequate drug testing, which is a huge issue for betting, then let's at least get some proper. Yeah, I don't think we should be calling our own calls. I think people see a lot more bad line calls in singles because things are going so fast and we're running and we're moving.
Mm-hmm.
So, devil's advocate a little bit, you kind of get what you pay for, and these refs are basically volunteering, if I'm being honest. This isn't
they're
even
fans. They're fans of the sport. They're fans of you guys.
Yes. Let me tell you, I don't have very many fans. Let me tell you.
Well, back to politics that's kind of on you. I mean, you'd be wise to schmooze the refs in between matches, right?
Like that's just like gross to me, you know?
Yeah.
And I have said that since I started playing the sport. Refs are fans, and that's a problem, you know? It's a problem that to me this kind of seems like, oh, they go for a weekend and they hang out and they socialize and they gossip about us. I've been at hotels and stuff, and I know it's a party for them. Like I've stayed at player hotels before. I've seen them walking from a golf course to the place. So that part to me really needs to be professionalized. I'm not sure how. You know, I know money here and there, but maybe you just pay a certain amount well and really train them up, or you start a system of getting, you know, some younger ones in and paying them a decent amount. I'm not really sure what the solution is, but it's something that needs to start being addressed.
Yeah.
Well, it's tough. I mean, even in the NFL, those guys aren't full-time referees. I'm sure like the head referee is, but like, you know, they all have full-time jobs.
I don't know if you
outside of
can
football.
like prevent somebody from being a fan, right? Like you're gonna go into reffing baseball or pickleball or NFL or whatever or tennis because you do enjoy the sport. But I do think what you mentioned is you can probably put some procedures around it, right? Like sure, you can be the biggest stalker fan that you want, but as soon as you post some picture of you with your favorite player, like you're done. It needs to be like you were an accountant before, right? When we were accountants, when we were auditors, you need to be impartial in both fact and appearance, right?
Yes.
So you need to make sure that you're not posting, you know, Ron Ponder's not posting his picture at somebody's birthday party or something, right? And I just say Ron because he's one of the more outspoken and out there referees. So there are some procedures that could be put around it. I just think as well, why not we have two referees on center courts, right? One of them is watching the kitchen.
Supposedly.
What does the other one do?
Well, they're both watching the kitchen, but let me tell you, I go back and I watch a lot of kitchen faults now. Like I was playing one match and there were multiple missed calls that totally could have altered it. And there was another match where luckily we ended up winning the point. And I'm like, I would love to see this kitchen cam because someone came across for a poach and like right over the line. I'm like, at this point, if you guys are really looking at kitchen faults, I need to start seeing some kitchen faults, you know? And when you have people maybe like 5'8" and like shorter, they're constantly reaching in and they're getting stuff, that's a key for me. Or you constantly hear them putting their paddle down on the kitchen line. That's a key for me that there's eventually going to be a kitchen fault. Not one was called. So I'm not really sure. And I just equated to the game going really fast. And if there's no penalties and there's no code of conduct for any of this, like what's your pressure to make the right call?
Yeah. I'm glad I escaped the under 5'8" thing. I'm 5'8.5" for anybody who's wondering. But
I don't know if you did.
No. She wasn't talking about me. I'm 5'8.5". She was talking about
I look for them all the time now, and I see them quite a bit. And I remember like a match I was talking to somebody, someone hit an Ernie and everyone on the stream called it, you know, and I'm not trying to bash them. I'm just saying there's no procedures or there's no protocols. And it seems like every week, like on Jimmy's podcast the other week, he was talking about it. And then this weekend, multiple things happened and they were talking about it. And just for me, like when I walk up to a court and I see a ref like this and like chatting with two players and laughing, that's completely and utterly inappropriate. And it should not be happening. It didn't even happen in my high school volleyball matches.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, when we go to a court, we pretty much immediately know whether we have a ref that's very good at their job or a ref that's not as good at their job, right? Like we know who the good refs are, and there are certain ones, okay, this match, like if you've got Big Mike on your court, right? He really only does, I haven't seen him at a PPA in a while. He really does MLP
Yeah, he never does. Yeah.
as a majority. Like, you're not getting away with any foot faults. And that's
Yeah.
what we all want. And so, I mean, I've said it before on this podcast. I do not care if the referee even really knows the rules of pickleball. If they can catch a foot fault and potentially there's a second ref that's looking at lines. I don't think any of the players, we all know the rules to a certain extent. And if we have a rules argument, we're going to go to the head ref anyway. We just want somebody who's going to call the kitchen. And so there are good refs. There are refs that aren't good at that. I think what we need to do is attract more people, or make the job more attractive for people who have the ability to call good kitchen and call lines. And right now the job isn't attractive to that. It's mostly attracting retired people who maybe don't have as good of a vision. I mean, we're just gonna say it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only one really getting paid is Don Stanley. And whenever I have Don on my court, I've never left a match being like, Don was super biased against me. I've never left a match being like he missed something. If he did, like it wasn't huge. He's on his foot faults. And I think I never see Don sitting around chatting with people. I never see Don sitting around chatting with the opponents before. So obviously, like, he's getting paid right, and he's following a certain line of professionalism.
Yeah. So maybe that's like, that's going to be very, very difficult to do for an entire tournament where there's a round of 64 women and round of 64 men going on at the exact same time. Maybe at least we say, hey, look, every match has referees, but for the important matches at the end of the day, like, let's get our good refs that we know are legit in for those matches at least, right?
Yeah, and I want a grievance system. Like, I want, in one of my quarterfinals matches, I got an overrule that was huge on a huge point where I have the replay and it's definitely out, and that altered the match. And things like were said by the ref that were super inappropriate. And I want a grievance system. I want to know how I can file a complaint and you can see that complaint and that adds up. Because right now it's like, oh, well, I'm sorry. And that's not the way real life works. If I messed up on something at a real job, like there was a protocol, there was a 3 strikes, you're out, or you had to go meet with HR, like a code of conduct as well. And we're just getting to that point in the sport that I really believe that we need to start addressing that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Like some sort of feedback system from the players to
absolutely
maybe it goes up to Don, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, because if there's nothing holding you accountable, I felt like we have sponsors, we have fans, we have stuff that holds us accountable to a certain level of what we do and everyone does at their job. So if you have nothing holding you accountable, what's the standard of like trying to succeed or anything?
So that's on the ref side. I have another way to deter players from doing it, because the refs don't always see it, and it's not always their job to see a baseline call, right?
Yeah.
I think that the PPA should post hooks of the week. So on courts where there's not a replay system and somebody just hooks blatantly, but the ref can't overturn it, I think the PPA should post, these were the worst hooks from the last tournament.
This is like flogging, essentially. It's correction by shame.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe they fine them too. All right, if you appear on hooks of the week, you're fined $100. But like, there right now, there's probably a couple of people in the YouTube chat that are like, yeah, that's a hook, and then it goes away forever, right?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
PPA, publish it. Hooks of the week.
Same with sandbagging. You got to shame sandbaggers. Call them out. It's the only way.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think it's worth starting a conversation and a serious conversation. The players' council, like I'm not sure who's on it, but if we're going to change a serve rule, maybe we should start, talking to some of them, because it just with betting, I just can't get over with betting getting in it, and you see like matches nowadays, the level's getting so high, everything's going 3, everybody can like win a tournament on a given day and then lose in the next round another day. Like if your level, like I just take it for me, I felt like I was playing great in Houston, my blood sugar was off, I was feeling super exhausted, and my level dipped, and the results showed it. Like my level didn't dip 90%, my level dipped probably 15%, and it's a far different outcome. So many matches are 11-8, 11-9 in the third, that you look at a lot of stuff and you're just like, ooh, like you kind of walk away being like, what if that didn't happen?
Yeah. It's an interesting point. A single point in pickleball now means more than a single point in pickleball has ever meant before. Meaning like the margins are thinner than ever from winning to losing. Ben and Colin used to roll through entire tournaments without having a third game or even having a close game. That's not the case anymore. They won in 5 games, like what, 11-8 in the third, right? And a couple of
Yeah.
those games were at its closest. A point now is worth more than it ever has been before, and it's only going to be worth more in the future as well. So a hook has more impact now than it theoretically did previously.
Absolutely. Like that's my number one. I don't think drug testing will really come in until maybe the Olympics come in. I mean, it's just a lot of money, and right now they're shelling a lot of money out, but that's an investment that I really see can reap a lot of benefits.
Mm-hmm. Is your number one the inconsistency in paddle tech and testing?
Yes. That's my thorn for sure.
I mean, it's on.
What is yours?
Just like the inconsistency in paddle technology testing and making sure we have an even playing field. It seems like we're at a point where literally everyone, like every other podcast, everybody on social is talking about the fact that some paddles are simply much better than others, and it creates a significant advantage.
I would say that's my number one. It's like the standards continue to change, the goalposts move. Some companies get away with X thing and other companies don't, right? And then the rules are changed. It's all over the place. Right now, the biggest issue is obviously last year it was the spin, right? The last 2 years it was the spin with carbons, with Pro XR, whatever.
For over a year now, it's been how hot they are.
Yeah.
I mean, it's our 1-year anniversary of my meltdown. So it's like, it's kind of like, I don't even really think about the paddle. My perception on the paddles is someone started it in 2021. Then another company came out with some good ones in 2022. And then ever since then, it seems like every single company is just playing catch up, much like the grit. I think it was Electrum, the first one with like massive grit. Mm-hmm. And then companies started following it. And, like it seems like you kind of need to make a rule before, and the rule makers have to be a little bit more forward thinking, because once it happens, everybody's going to start doing it.
Yeah. Well, and so everybody's going to start doing it, but the problem is that there's a very, very substantial delay between the time that the first person gets a loophole figured out, right? Let's say Gearbox with the Evo foam, which had previously not been allowed. Okay, they get this worked out for them. Okay, now everybody needs to play catch up, and they need to give their pros the exact same thing that's going to market. Why don't we just get rid of that rule that the paddle that I actually use can be different than what the paddle Pro XR actually sells? That way, it can be the exact same thing as tennis. Everybody at the pro level is basically playing with the same technology. And then Wilson goes and makes a Roger Federer racket that goes out to the public, and it's different than a Babolat Pure Drive, but all the pros are really playing with pretty much the same tech. That at least keeps the pro level at the same competitive advantage, right? In tennis, there's no real material advantage in one tennis racket over another. There's slight differences, right? But the manufacturers can make whatever it is that they want. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And I do know in tennis though, like, so what my sister's husband is ranked, I'm not sure what he's ranked now, but he's in doubles and he's a Wilson sponsored player. I know he can't get what Roger Federer gets. I know he just gets whatever the Wilson blade is. Like, I've asked him about it before. So there is going to be a lot of that stuff if you know, am I going to get the same paddle that Ben Johns is allowed to, or is that only going to go to certain people? And that gives a higher, you know, quality of that. But I guess that's kind of within each company. But I think because, I mean, we've seen people use custom paddles off the market. I mean, you technically can. I don't know how they would ever prove it. I know other people have done it before. What's stopping us?
Yeah, I mean, we know it's the case that it does happen, but it's still this behind the scenes sort of thing that it's a gray area. Most companies still don't want to actually do that.
Most companies won't, but there are those companies that will. And so, I mean, there's just so much gray area with paddles. I really feel like it's up to US APA to kind of like step up and say, like, are we going to get rid of the Therafoam? Is the pro game getting too fast? And like, amateur players can use it, but only pro players can use it. But let me tell you, I mean, I have some friends who play amateur, and I've gone and watched their matches, and I've just been warming up and watching. Holy crap. Like, they're buying these Therafoam paddles, and they're not getting them replaced like us. They're using hotter paddles than us. I see more people get hit and like just body bags and wild swings out there on the amateur courts than there are with us. I think it's like kind of a problem all over, and it's something needs to be done, but I don't think anything really will be done until there's like a bad accident on site.
Yeah. Or some pro takes one to, once a pro loses an eye, then something's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think we need a high profile case of something going wrong, right? To make this an issue. And I think if there was the same climate right now, last year when Jesse got hit in the head and got a concussion, I think we'd be talking about banning these a little bit more. The power wasn't quite as hot of a topic in July of last year when Jesse was concussed by a pickleball.
Yeah.
It was wild. Well, somebody I was talking to, he runs a paddle brand. He was like, it's funny that recently the trending topic of conversation was eyewear versus just the paddles being insanely powerful, right? It was like weird that we all talked about eyewear being necessary now versus being like, hey, maybe these paddles are playing a little too hot.
Should I go wear a helmet next tournament?
Yeah, just to make a point.
Just to make a point.
That'd be really funny. A hockey helmet with like, no visor on it.
Yeah, or with the full cage in front.
Yeah. That'd be good stuff.
Mouth guard, everything.
Yeah.
What about pads? Should I have like goalie pads out
just
there?
To make a point? Just to one match championship court, you just walk out there in full hockey pads.
That would make a point.
It would definitely create a conversation. Everyone would be like, why did he do this? And then you'd be forced to talk about it, and it would elevate the conversation.
It would elevate the conversation, but I don't think anything would be done.
Yeah,
that's
right.
That's kind of just the point I'm at. I actually am like a huge advocate for taking the power down, but it's more of like a selfish reasoning in the sense that I feel like I'm a pretty powerful girl, and it used to be like a huge skill of mine. I'm like, well, I'm more powerful than most girls. And now Elise Jones is clocking the ball just as hard as me. So I'm like, I would personally, just from a selfish standpoint, from the women's game, just be like, oh, it'd be nice if we all could only use our natural power. Mm-hmm. But that's just like super selfish.
Yeah, but I mean, it's rational. It's a skill, and it's something that is one of your competitive advantages. So you're able to hit the ball harder generally than your opponents. Well, what if there was what if you were faster and there was some shoe that made your opponents faster? Would you like that? No. So it's
Yeah.
natural to not want that, to want to have your competitive advantages and showcase your skills. You don't want power to be a completely even playing field, right? You want certain players to be able to hit more powerfully than others because that's part of their skill set. And maybe they can't dink as well as other players, right? You have somebody like in tennis previously, like a Juan Martín del Potro, who could absolutely knock the crap out of a forehand. And it
Yeah.
was unique and different because he could do it so much better than anybody else. He was so much more powerful than anybody else. Well, if everybody could hit forehands the exact same way because the technology is so good for somebody's racket, that takes the interestingness out of it, right? It's not as interesting if everybody can do it the exact same way.
Yeah, that's a good argument for it. I totally do. I just think it's like it's gonna need like the USAPA and the PPA and like a governing body to really like come together and be like, what are we gonna do about this? It's gonna be really interesting here in Red Rock, just the type of play, because I mean, just in my practice sessions, it's like if you, whoever tees off first essentially seems like is the safer bet. So I think it's going to be some really ugly pickleball with this ball, especially since this ball is pretty hard to drop anyway and kind of can float anyway. Here in altitude, I really think it's gonna be pretty wild.
Yeah, there's gonna be no dinking this weekend.
Yeah.
No,
Zero
no.
dinking.
If
Zero
you're
dinking.
dinking, you're gonna be exiting very early.
Yeah. I just remember playing in Utah, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it's very noticeable. It's very noticeable. It's not like a very slight thing to where it doesn't affect the game. What are you smirking at?
So instead of your forehands going 7 feet out, they're going 10 feet out. What?
Yeah, there you go. Good. Got that one out of your system.
Dude.
Yeah.
Too bad that you don't have a men's partner this weekend, Zane. These are your conditions.
These are my conditions.
So I'm not trying to kiss your ass, but I always tell people like Zane is my favorite player, men's player to watch, because it's not like just wild chaos. It's like constructed chaos, but you're never like J-Dub and Dylan out there. Just dink, 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 dink. Like when you and Alshon played together, I had a lot of fun watching you guys. I'm gonna have a lot of fun watching you and Riley. I think that will be fun. You and Eric Lang were a blast to watch. I only tune into really your men's doubles matches.
Oh,
and when
let's
Matt
go.
Wright and Riley played together, because they were fun as well.
Yeah, they were electric. No, I appreciate it. I think there's a little bit of game theory creeping into actual strategy here. Like we all know where somebody's tendencies are, so you got to I try to be a little bit more unpredictable, and there's certainly something to be said for just complete and utter execution, like a J-Dub. You know exactly what J-Dub is going to do every single time. If he's got a backhand, he's going to hit it cross court. If he can take it out of the air, he's going to speed it up. If he's got a forehand, he's going to hit the softest, shallowest, shittiest dink you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can really do about it.
It fits his personality, right? Just very, very constructed. He probably really like lives his life like that. But more chaotic people like myself, like I just kind of find that game style a little bit more boring. And I think it's good for the men's doubles game, like just bringing a little bit more flair, a little bit more unpredictability and stuff. Because like, yes, as a purist, watching the Johns is fun because I can learn some stuff, but also it was a lot of fun to watch Jaume just kind of like pull some shots out that I've never seen before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You and Jaume should play one. That would be fun.
I think that'd be fun. That would be about as chaotic as it gets, I think.
Yeah, that would be amazing to see, actually.
There would be a lot of different shots on that.
Okay, so over the weekend, how often were you guys seeing players walk up with 7 paddles, test them all just to get one to pass and be able to play with it? Was it as common as social media is indicating right now?
I don't know who's just sitting by the paddle people and getting all this insider info, but I don't know about Zane, but I bring my paddles up, I drop them off, they tell me when they're going to be done, and I go grab the ones that pass. Like, they had a rule, and I've been following that rule that you can only drop off at 3 at a time. So I don't know who's sitting outside the paddle testing door, and I don't know why they're allowing people to just like kind of sitting out there keeping notes on it.
But hold on, you even just said that you drop off X paddles and only X pass, and you move forward with those, but you create that margin, so you show up with enough paddles that.
I mean, it depends on the day, right? Like, I wouldn't say I have an obscene amount more than anybody else failing, but some fail. Like, every company is now pushing this limit, and when you are making them kind of up to standard, then some might, and there might be a little inconsistency in the test, but they have this rule that you can only drop 3 paddles off. And so I haven't seen anyone walk up with boxes trying to drop them off.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I can attest that that's not being enforced. I didn't know about this rule, and I brought.
Oh, it's not being enforced.
I didn't know. I didn't know that it was a rule. Maybe it was, and maybe I got away with it. So I brought 5 to the tournament the day before, and I said, these are for multiple days of playing. I only need 1 per day. And so if like,
and you just leave them there and pick them up.
I just leave them there so they don't have to go test them again. So like I'll use I used a paddle for mixed on Friday, and then I just kept it. And then I went on Saturday and I grabbed 1 more of my paddles from them and I kept it. And then on Sunday I grabbed 1 of my paddles back from them. So I did give them 5 at the start. So I wasn't aware that this was a rule, but
they just said that in Austin, like you can only drop 3 off at a time. I just think to make things go quicker. So I just kind of took that as, it's a rule. So I just drop 3 off when I get there. And I always leave mine, but
yeah,
I've walked in and I've heard some people be like, so how are you guys doing with these paddles? Or how are you doing with these paddles? And then like, I just don't know who's like stopping in front of the paddle people and kind of being like the paddle police or getting some inside reporting. I haven't, but then again, I'm not on social media very much.
Fair. No, I mean, when I talk to people, I've never actually seen it. And you're right. You bring up a good point. I don't know who's actually, getting this information, but when I talk to people, I'll be like, oh, so-and-so had 7 of 8 of their paddles fail, or they had all their paddles fail, and now they have to go get one from somebody else. I don't know where this information is coming from, but I'm assuming you hear stuff like that.
Yeah, maybe I'm just like so into my own world nowadays. Like, I literally am so far out of these paddle discussions. I know Jack Sock said that, he thinks there should be a limit of what you should test per weekend.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, if that is a foreseeable solution, maybe we do that.
Yeah, I think he said like you should only be allowed to drop off like 3 to 4 paddles. After that, you're screwed.
It kind of makes sense, because if you can go drop off 100 paddles, like literally, if you do 100 paddles and this test is 95% accurate, you could give 100 bad paddles and have 5 of them pass just because of the variation of the test.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's not a bad point whatsoever.
Yeah.
No, but sometimes the accuracy, like I know I've had a paddle fail. I've taken that paddle, resubmitted it the next weekend, and it somehow passes. So I do think they're working on their testing, but it's not like ironclad right now either.
So what do you think? Do you think that is there a paddle on the market? Okay, backing up. Do you remember when the Franklin Ben Johns paddle came out, and it was the grittiest paddle out there, and it
the
was
greatest paddle at the time.
At the time, it was, right?
Yeah.
Everyone had one of those things.
Everyone had one of those, and that's actually was the standard for surface texture at that point, right?
Oh wow.
That was the standard, and they sort of reinvented the standard for surface texture before that. So you could make an argument that this type of changing of the rules dates back to that time. Before that paddle,
Yeah.
everything else was super, super slick on the face. That paddle was what, as I recall, established the 40 RT grip measurement, or RZ, or
Yeah.
whatever. So at that point, that was the standard for surface roughness. Is there a paddle on the market that you think should be the upper limit of power, or where would Lea Jansen set the standard for power, and what paddle would you use in as example?
So if I were to set the standard of power, I would be pretty lame and set it back to like 2021 and use the Engage Maverick as the borderline, honestly. And I know the game has evolved so much that would be hard to do, and maybe points would be longer, but I felt like that paddle was super powerful. I felt like you could still have good feel on it, but I also felt like I couldn't just take a drive from the back of the court and like not almost knock someone out with it. And I use a super powerful paddle. I more so do it out of necessity though. Like I do it because, you know, this is kind of where the game is going. So I feel like I had to. And a lot of us at JOOLA last year, because people forget, we at JOOLA did not have powerful paddles like up until about 6 to 7 months ago. And we kept on asking, like, we need more power, we need more power, we need more power, just because the game has been changing and we were playing against 002s and a lot of other stuff. So me personally, just because I feel like power is not something I need, I would set it at the Engage Maverick standard, or like the real Paddletech Bantam standard. It might be pretty soft now, but I just think that would add a little bit more to the game. It would make the Johns insufferable to play, though.
Well, I yes and no. Like I think you are afraid to speed up sometimes in the men's game because the paddles are so poppy. And I guess I do think that bringing back paddle technology would probably benefit them a decent amount, but I think it'd be interesting to see if there's any good film of Ben and Colin playing together with Franklin balls. The only time I can really remember that is back in the Chicken and Pickle Masters a few years ago, right?
They played 2022 US Open, if I remember correctly. They won that. Okay.
But they had good and interesting matches with Thomas Wilson and AJ. I think they had a match point against them. I think that would be the best case study of what happens if we were to bring the game back a little bit. That's because those were very, very slow conditions with the Franklin ball at the US Open. But anyway, you could be right. Who knows? It'd be interesting to see what would happen if we did dumb down the power of the paddles.
Yeah. I know there's been some stuff said like, oh, well, the guys' paddles should be down a little bit more. And I'm just like, well, as a female, I would love that. I would just be able to go toe to toe with anybody in front of me. If you guys are going to dumb down your paddles, but not dumb down mine. So girls can hit the living, like counter some of the hardest shots now. Like it's kind of crazy.
Well, I'd love to have whoever said that on our podcast and have a conversation about that. I don't know if
I think Colin has said that.
Really?
I don't know if it was on your podcast, but I've heard Colin talk about that.
To have different paddles for men and women?
Yeah, you like dumb down the guys a little bit more. I'm like, please do. That would be amazing.
I think it could make sense in men's and women's, but we do play this thing called mixed, right?
Exactly. Like, but they're saying for the mixed game, it would be more interesting for guys going against girls head to head. It's like nowadays, if you're going to speed up on Anna Bright's backhand, I don't care. Like that's one and done. Like if she's seeing it, she's clocking it and you're not touching it. It doesn't matter how fast your paddle is.
Fair. All right. You guys think we're good on paddle talk?
I am, yeah.
I'm good on paddle talk.
I mean, everything we're talking about, whether it's line calls, the possibility of steroids, the overly powerful paddles, it keeps coming back to this root of like, We just want a level playing field so that people stop having certain advantages, so we can just go out there and compete based on our individual skill sets and not have to worry about the rest. And that, because of a variety of issues, is not the case right now.
Yeah. And there's so much money, like there's so much incentive to stay on top now. So, but I mean, this is growing pains in every sport, even established sport. So of course we're going to be facing this.
Mm-hmm.
Take the refs to dinner, make bad line calls, have the poppiest paddles, drop off 100 to the paddle testing. So a certain number of clearly over the limit paddles make it through. And you'll probably have better results if you're willing to do it.
Yep. This is the feed for all you listening out there.
Yeah.
By the way, that clip that came out, like, it was probably a couple months ago, where I was talking about how you should just call every ball
That
out.
was so funny.
So many people in the comment section were just flaming me.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
I was like,
You were playing devil's advocate, and the way
It
it was
was-
cut was like, that's what you were suggesting.
right.
It was so funny because Lucy just has had a few line call controversies, and before we played, she's like, I'm just gonna call every ball out. Close ball out, overrule me. And then we're in a match and the ball is like this far out and I'm cross court, so I can't call it. I think Lucy's gonna call it, and she like plays it, and we end up losing the point. We lose that match, and that point was huge because we would have sided out and we still would have had the momentum, and still they reeled off 3 points. And in my mind, I'm just thinking, like, Lucy, you can't do that. Like, you're not. You even called that ball in.
Mm-hmm.
Yikes. Yeah, it's. I think we need a PPA hooks of the week. I think that's the main takeaway from this podcast. Chris Cantino should do that. That guy, Cali Chris. Wait, is that Chris Cantino?
No,
It's Cali Chris.
Callie Chris. Oh my gosh, yeah, he should make that something, like his podcast would go viral.
Yeah.
I was complaining to him about, I was like, and I was showing him the replay, and he was like, oh yeah, I heard her talking. She was like laughing with her ref friends and saying like, Lea's all pissed and like, I don't care. I'm like, so professional. A fan can hear this. Awesome.
Yikes. All right. Chris Cali, we're hand feeding it to you. You got to do PPA hooks of the week, dude. I think that's a good call. That'll go viral. And I want to be mentioned one time for having it be my idea, and then you can go run with it for forever. All right, Tommy, what else you want to talk about?
Well, we can talk about Major League Pickleball, how you feel about your team, or we can talk about power rankings in women's doubles and singles, because I think we published a top 20 and you, I believe, took issue with it. And I wanted to see if you were to rank the, you're giving me a face like you don't know what I'm talking about.
No, I do.
Oh, okay.
That was like the most ridiculous one.
Oh, I don't know what we're talking about. You're gonna have to
I got ranked 4th, and I was like, well, that's disrespectful. I'm just like not gonna repost this. No, power rankings are so subjective. I also heard your guys' power rankings on some of the men's doubles, and I didn't really agree with them.
Was
I
it
think you
ours,
guys,
the one that we talked about, or was it the one from the blogger?
Right.
no, you guys were talking, and listen, I think Riley is a great player. In like, for sure, like not taking, he's far more accomplished than me and not taking anything away from him. But you guys, I think Thomas had him as number 2 on the power rankings. And at that point, he wasn't like steady making a podium yet. Like, and you know, it could be partner, whatever. But the power, yeah. So power rankings are so subjective, but I definitely did not agree with Riley Newman at number 2 either.
In the article or on our podcast?
On your podcast, you were talking about it.
Oh, okay. All right.
And then I don't think, like, at the time, Thomas Wilson to me is a top 5 men's doubles player, and he was not mentioned.
Yeah.
So
I feel like
power rankings are just so subjective. And not only that, it's like who you play with, it seems like.
for sure.
Certain people like just fit your mold of a game. Like, immediately. Like, I'm probably a top 5 player when I'm on the court with Tina Pisnik. Probably not a top 5 player when I'm on the court with somebody else. Zane's probably a top 5 player when he's on the court with Christian Alshon, and Christian Alshon the same. But maybe they're not when they're on a court with somebody else. So it's hard to tell if you're not playing with people consistently. So I would rather not do the power rankings, especially because in women's singles, it's very clear it's Anna Leigh. But then there's been, and this is my whole thing, like you can't say a certain girl is number 2 now. Like I was just on a really big hot streak, but I just took a bad loss. So Salome was on a hot streak and she just kind of took, like, I think she lost to Catherine and then me. Catherine was on a hot streak and then she took a few bad losses. So it's so hard to just say who is number 2 in women's singles, in my opinion.
You'll say a lot of things, but you won't do power rankings. I like it. But you did.
No, I want to play with half of the people too. So I'm like, I'm not going to go rank them.
Yeah, right. Okay, so this we'll flip it, and you can keep that idea alive. So you said Thomas Wilson, and I agree. He tends to fall out of a lot of people's top 5s. I feel like he doesn't get the credit he deserves. Who are some other players like that who you think are consistently at the top, but maybe just don't get that respect, or kind of left out of the power rankings? And
I don't think Zane or Tyson gets near the amount of respect. They have proven on multiple different times that they can make deep runs with multiple different people. And I know Zane kind of flips around a lot, so that's a little bit more difficult. I think for a while, I think James Ignatowicz was getting too much for men's doubles. I think he was getting ranked high on his potential, more so. I think people leave Matt Wright out quite a bit, and when he has the right partnership, I've always thought people kind of sleep on Andre, but obviously after Austin, that became, I think that's when you guys were talking about it too. Like, is Andre number 2? Yeah. I always thought Andre was super, super underrated. Geez, who else?
Let's see. People for a while, Dylan was in that category, right? He was just playing unbelievably with not great partners. Federico probably too, right? Although he's getting the respect he deserves, definitely, with being first round draft pick in MLP a couple times in a row. It's the people who don't have super flashy games that tend to be underrated, right? Like a Susanna Barr is actually a great example. She's got a quirky, unorthodox game, but like she does a very good job of winning, right? She'll have some random weird errors that makes things look bad, but I think it's the unconventional games a little bit. Dylan, with somebody
like the Kawamotos were like tirelessly underrated until finally last year. Like, still, even at the beginning of last year, people were like, "Oh, Kawamotos." I'm like, Kawamotos have been good for so long, and people won't give them really the respect. And then there's some people who have one result and they are top 3 for the rest of their life. So it's public perception, but I would definitely say, especially, just the people who's done it with multiple different partners. I know a lot of people hate on Tyson's doubles game, but you have to give the guy some respect, because I can think of numerous partners that he goes and medals with.
Yeah. Anybody come to mind? Anybody else other than the Kawamotos come to mind on the women's side?
Susanna was a good one. I actually think Brooke Buckner. I know she's kind of coming along on singles, and I've always, like, I remember when watching Brooke play singles at the beginning of last year and telling my mom, this girl's going to be a problem. Like, she's fucking freaking good. And and then she luckily got pregnant, and I was like, yay. And now obviously she's coming back into form now, but I think she's a really, really good right side player. Like, I think she's going, if you get her with a really good left side girl, she's good, and she's got that like psycho competitiveness that she really wants to be good. I also think Alex Strong is really coming up, and she's been around for a while, so no one really maybe notices, but every time I watch her, I'm super impressed with her. I think she's going to get a lot better, especially now that she transferred over to the PPA. I mean, we kind of saw it with Paris Todd. I felt like playing Paris at the beginning of February compared to playing Paris now is a massive difference just from the PPA competition, and she's clearly working at it. So I would say probably those two. I mean, you could have said Pisnik, but I think Pisnik is finally getting her rightful due.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Cool. All right. That was a good last topic. I think we're about at time. Lea, thanks for coming on. I don't know if we got that one-liner out of you that we really wanted to. So
we should do it some other time then. I'm sure
you got to
after
come to
MLB,
the studio.
Yeah, once you get me in the studio, you can get me going more.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
Wow, you didn't take any of my bait. I'm disappointed in
Well,
myself.
you didn't really even give me any.
I don't mean to. I just want to have interesting conversations.
You'll make on one podcast episode I was watching, you made like a little bit of a snarky question and they did not pick up on it, and it was really funny. You were asking about a clothing sponsorship. And
okay, which one? Come on, call it out. I'm okay. Let's hear it.
You asked Lee about her Gucci sponsorship.
Oh yeah.
She was like, oh no, I mean, we reached out, but I was like, I wonder if that was a little bit of like, if you would have asked me that, I would have been like, shut up.
Well, the world will never know if that was a snarky comment or not, but one can only imagine.
All right. That's Pickle Pod. Thanks, Lea.
Thanks, Lea.
Thanks, guys. All right, bye.
The pickle box.
The pickleball box?
The dink
Pickleball box.
Yeah, just kidding. It's the pickleball box.
The Pickleball box.
It is a subscription box.
Gear, accessories, apparel.
And it comes straight to my door with all the hottest pickleball gear in here.
It's so hot I can barely...
Over $250 of value in each box, and you only pay $99 for each one. Go to thedink.shop, undoubtedly the best gift for any pickleballer, or if you're like me, or anybody who listens to this, you're obsessed with pickleball, this is honestly like the perfect thing for you.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, rather had fun,